Good morning, students. I am Riya Sinha, your SST teacher. Today, we are going to start chapter number 7 of history, that is Ashoka, the emperor who gave up war. As you all know, for any king or any ruler, doing war is the most prominent and significant thing. It's his or her duty to do war for their people, for their kingdom. But Ashoka was the first emperor who gave up war. So, in this chapter, we are going to study about Ashoka. See the first topic given in your book, a very big kingdom, that is an empire. The lions that we see on our notes and coins have a long history. They were carved in stone and placed on the top of a massive stone pillar at Sarnath. In this para, lions were mentioned, which we can easily see on our notes and coins. Here, we will discuss about it, which have a long history. These lions were carved in stone and placed on the top of a massive stone pillar at Sarnath. Ashoka was one of the greatest rulers known to history, and on his instructions, inscriptions were inscribed on pillars as well as on rock surfaces. So, before we find out what was written in these inscriptions, let us see why his kingdom was called an empire. The empire that Ashoka ruled was founded by his grandfather Chandragupta Maurya more than 2300 years ago. The kingdom or an empire which was ruled by Ashoka, it was mainly founded by his grandfather named Chandragupta Maurya around 2300 years ago. So Chandragupta was supported by a wise man named Chanakya or Kautilya. Many of Chanakya's ideas were written down in a book called Arthashastra. All the wise ideas of Chanakya were written down in a book called Arthashastra. There were several cities in the empire, and these included the capital Patliputra, Takshila, and Ujjain. Takshila was a gateway to the northwest, including Central Asia, while Ujjain lay on the route from north to South India. Merchants, officials, and craftspersons probably lived in these cities. See, when we combine some of the cities together, then it makes an empire. So here we are talking about an empire. Several cities together make up an empire, and these included the capital Patliputra, Takshila, and Ujjain. Takshila was a gateway to the northwest, including Central Asia, and Ujjain lay on the route from north to South India. In other areas, there were villages of farmers and herders. In some areas, such as central India, there were forests where people gathered forest produce and hunted animals for food. People in different parts of the empire spoke different languages, and they probably ate different kinds of food and wore different kinds of clothes as well, because obviously their living condition were different from one place to another. So they used to spoke different languages, ate different kinds of food, and wore different kinds of clothes. see in map, the Mauryan Empire was shown here, in which all the principal cities and some of the places where inscriptions were found were located. How are empires different from kingdoms? What is the basic difference between kingdoms and empires? See, emperors need more resources than kings because empires are larger than kingdoms. This is the basic difference between kingdoms and empires, that empires are much more larger than kingdoms and need to be protected by big armies. So that's why emperors need more resources than kings. Next difference is C. So also they need a large number of officials who collect taxes. Means the basic difference between empires and kingdoms is empires are larger than kingdoms, so they need more resources. Emperors need more resources than kings because they need to be protected by big armies, and they need to be protected by big armies so that they need a larger number of officials who used to collect taxes. Okay, now see the next topic, ruling the empire. As we all know, the empire was so large, different parts were ruled differently. The area around Patliputra was under the direct control of the emperor because it was the capital of Mauryan Empire. Patliputra was the capital city of Mauryan Empire. So that area was under the control of the emperor. This meant that officials were appointed to collect taxes from farmers, herders, craftspersons, and traders who lived in villages and towns in the area. Officials also punished those who disobeyed the ruler's order. Obviously, if anyone tried to disobey the order of their emperor, then official used to punish them. Many of these officials were given salaries. Messengers went to and fro, and spies kept a watch on the officials. And of course, the emperor supervised them all with the help of members of the royal family and senior ministers. There were other areas or provinces, like each of these was ruled from a provincial capital, such as Takshila or Ujjain. Although there was some amount of control from Patliputra, and royal princes were often sent as governors, local customs and rules were probably followed. Besides, there were vast areas between these centers. Here, the Mauryas tried to control roads and rivers, which were important for transport, and to collect whatever resources were available as tax and tribute. Means they tried to control all the things, including roads and rivers, and whatever were important for transport, and to collect whatever resources were available in their empire, they used to collect it as tax and tribute. For example, the Earth Shastra tells us that the northwest was important for blankets and South India for its gold and precious stones. So it is possible that these resources were collected as tribute. Now, what do you mean by the term tribute? Unlike taxes, which were collected on regular basis, tribute was mainly collected as and when it was possible from people who gave a variety of things more or less willingly. People were bound to pay taxes, but if they want to give anything as tribute, then it's totally depend on their will. There were also the forested regions. People living in these areas were more or less independent but may have been expected to provide elephants, timber, honey, and wax to Mauryan officials. Okay, now see the emperor and the capital city. Megasthenes was an ambassador who was sent to the court of Chandragupta by the Greek ruler of West Asia named Seleucus Nicator. Megasthenes wrote an account about what he saw. Here is a part of his description, what he has here given. The occasions on which the emperor appears in public are celebrated with grand royal processions. He is carried in a golden palanquin. His guards ride elephants decorated with gold and silver. Some of the guards carry trees on which live birds, including a flock of trained parrots, circle about the head of the emperor. The king is normally surrounded by armed women. He is afraid that someone may try to kill him. He has special servants to taste the food before he eats. He never sleeps in the same bedroom for 2 nights. All these things were described by Megasthenes. According to him, uh, the emperor, whenever he used to appear in public, that day was celebrated with grand royal procession. He was carried in a golden palanquin with lots of guards who ride elephants and decorated that elephants were decorated with gold and silver. Even some of the guards carried trees on which live birds, including a flock of trained parrots, circled about the head of the emperor. The king was surrounded by armed women. He was afraid that someone may try to kill him. So he had special servants to taste the food before he eats, and he never slept in the same bedroom for 2 nights. And about the Patliputra, the modern Patna or capital city of the modern empire, he wrote, "This is a large and beautiful city. It is surrounded by a massive wall. It has 570 towers and 64 gates. The houses of 2 and 3 stories are built of wood and mud brick. The king's palace is also of wood and decorated with stone carvings. It is surrounded with gardens and enclosures for keeping birds." About Patliputra, Megasthenes wrote that it was large and beautiful city which was surrounded by a massive wall, and it had 570 towers and 64 gates. Houses were of 2 and 3 stories and were built of wood and mud brick. King's palace was also of wood and decorated with stone carvings, which was surrounded with gardens and enclosures for keeping birds. Okay, so next topic is Ashoka, a unique ruler. The most famous Mauryan ruler was Ashoka. He was the first ruler who tried to take his message to the people through inscriptions. Most of Ashoka's inscriptions were in Prakrit and were written in the Brahmi script. Ashoka was the most famous Mauryan ruler, and he was the unique one because he was the first ruler who tried to take his message to the people through inscriptions, which was mainly written in Prakrit language and in Brahmi script. Next topic is Ashoka's war in Kalinga. Kalinga is the ancient name of coastal Orissa. Ashoka fought a war to conquer Kalinga. However, he was so horrified when he saw the violence and bloodshed that he decided not to fight any more wars. He is the only king in the history of the world who gave up conquest after winning a war. Kalinga War was basically a turning point in the life of Ashoka because after winning that war, he gave up war. He was the only king in history who gave up after the conquest or after winning a war. That bloodshed horrified him, that violence and bloodshed terrified him so much, he was traumatized that he gave up conquest after winning a war. Now, Ashoka's inscription describing the Kalinga War. This was exactly what Ashoka declared in one of his inscriptions. 8 years after becoming king, I conquered Kalinga. About 1.5 lakh people were captured, and more than 1 lakh of people were killed. This filled me with sorrow. Why? Whenever an independent land is conquered, lakhs of people die, and many are taken prisoner. Brahmins and monks also died. People who were kind to their relatives and friends, to their slaves and servants died or lose their loved ones. That is why I am sad and have decided to observe Dham and to teach others about it as well. I believe that winning people over through Dham is much better than conquering them through force. I am inscribing this message for the future so that my son and grandson after me should not think about war. Instead, they should try to think about how to spread Dham. Dham, which is frequently used here, is the Prakrit word for the Sanskrit term dharma. In his inscription, Ashoka has described the Kalinga War and the main reason behind why he gave up war. He is describing that 8 years when he became king after that, he conquered Kalinga. There he saw that about 1.5 lakh people were captured and many more were killed. This filled him with sorrow. He thought that whenever an independent land is conquered, lakhs of people die, and many were taken as prisoner also. Brahmins and monks were also died. So people who are kind to their relatives and friends, to their slaves and servants, all were died or lose their loved ones. So that's why he was sad, and he decided to observe Dham and to teach others about it as well. He believed that winning people over through Dham is much better than conquering them through force. He was inscribed this message for the future so that his son and grandson after him should not think about war, and they also should try to think about how to spread dharma. So that was his inscription. That's all for today. Thank you and have a nice day.